Hey everybody, welcome to the About Podcast. We are going to be doing a first time special episode here where davyrockett schools y'all bitches on some audio stuff. So yeah, sit back, get out your college ruled composition notebooks, and let's all just hope that the intro music doesn't interrupt me again.
Davey, what the hell's going on with our theme song?
What did you do?
What the hell's going on with your respective faces?
Oh.
Well, friends.
They're sitting on the front of our heads.
That's right.
Yeah, but not in the center, which is weird.
Yeah, that's a...
So what happened to our theme song that made it so shitty in this example is actually something that makes mixes much better somehow, because the universe is a shitty place that doesn't make sense.
That explains it all.
much like my face.
So what I did at the end of the theme song there is I put on a high pass filter, which only lets the high frequencies pass, which is it makes sense when you think about it, but it's kind of counterintuitive to call it a high pass filter in my opinion. But that's the naming convention that the powers that be have decided it's called. It's easier for my brain to call it a low cut filter.
Cool.
So why would you want to do that to a song? Or anything, really? Generally,
you wouldn't want to do that to a song, but to certain elements in a mix, there's just all this stuff that's happening in the low end that isn't important, and it's just clouding up your mix.
Okay.
But don't we want all that low end so our mix will be beefy?
Good question, Sir Tashi. No. No, we don't. Honestly, a beefier mix is going to come from making good decisions about what is down there. So, for example, the fundamentals of the bass guitar, the lowest note you can play on a standard 4-string, standardly tuned bass guitar is 40 hertz. But that's generating overtones up the whole spectrum. So you can choose to leave that there or not. Your brain fills it in. You're still essentially hearing the fundamental, even if you cut.
So if I want to hear a big, round, beefy mix, what do I do instead of leaving all the low in there?
Well, sir, rather than tell you, why don't I show you orally?
Heyo. I'm here, Davey.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, orally. So I put together a little thing using an acoustic version of our Chinchilla theme song, a super rough mix. There's no compression, no EQ, nothing going on here aside from using low cut. There I go. Using nothing but high-pass filters to see if we can clean up the mix that way. And I'm going to start by playing an un-high-pass filtered version of this mix. Doesn't sound too clear. Let's listen to just what's happening below 150 hertz. Pretty shitty. Let's listen to just the guitars below 150 hertz to see if there's anything so precious that we simply have to preserve. Nope. Here's an example of the guitar with no high-pass filter. And now with a high-pass filter cutting all frequencies below 150 hertz. Still sounds pretty good, right? With the exception of the playing. Not too anemic. I don't really miss any of the low bullshit we cut out. So now, let's hear the full drum kit, unfiltered. That actually sounds pretty great. Just for fun, though, let's cut all frequencies below 150 hertz here as well. Okay. Now let's give the kick drum its low end back, but just the kick drum. That is super crisp. Depending on the style, I'd maybe give the snare some more floor space as well, but for the sake of a simple example, I'm going to leave it alone. Now for the main event, the fight we've all been training for. Bass guitar versus kick drum. This is the reason we saved all of this prime sub 150 hertz real estate. By allowing only these two elements access to the basement, we've created an opportunity to make our entire mix punchy, full, and warm and bassy, or if we make some careful and unfucky choices, all of the above. Let's listen to just the bass and the kick drum. Not terrible. However, let's hear what's happening just below 150 hertz. Remember, even though it sounded pretty good unfiltered, any clashes down here are going to be compounded into much bigger problems when they meet the rest of the mix. Okay, we basically have two choices, at least for the purpose of this demonstration. We can either let the bass guitar live in this part of the spectrum, or we can let the kick live there. Just like mommy and daddy, they both still love you, but you don't want them in the same basement at the same time. However, double birthdays and Christmases, it's still your fault, though. You should know that. So here's option number one. Let's let the bass guitar have the lows. We'll still feel the punch of the kick, but not that sub-oomph. This also makes the kick seem less tonal if that was an issue. This style of mixing is really popular with genres like reggae, rap, R&B, etc. Ja man, Ja Rastafari Khan, bo, bassy. Now let's hear option two. We're kicking the bass guitar out and awarding sole custody of the low-lows to the kick drum. Oh, word. That shit is punchy AF. And I honestly don't miss the ultra-low bass that much. A rad trick to convince your brain that all the bass is still there in the final mix is to use an exciter or even some distortion to generate some additional harmonics from the bass guitar, but that's kind of beyond the scope of this study. However, check out our mix thus far, post low-end cleanup, and see if you feel like I've deprived you of anything. I'm sorry, what's that? Oh, I was right, you say? You're sorry for doubting me? Too little too late, listeners. Y'all said some shit that can't be unsaid by saying nothing at all. But Davey, everyone listens to music on earbuds or shitty phone speakers nowadays anyway. They aren't even hearing the low end. All right. Listen up, boner. I can't stress this enough. The tightness and cleanliness of the low end informs the tightness and cleanliness of your entire mix, even if you can't hear it. The muddy overtones of your neglected bass frequencies are fucking up your whole show, bro. Do you even HPF?
Okay, so Davey, it sounds like what's going on here is you're saying and demonstrated pretty clearly there that making a mix sound round and full is less about having all the sounds everywhere across the frequency spectrum and more about managing the limited amount of like psychoacoustic space smartly.
Yeah.
Is that right?
I think that's totally accurate. In fact, sometimes you can hear it on just an acoustic guitar or something. It'll actually sound punchier and warmer if you take out some of the lows.
Okay. Now, is that going to be the same for live mixes as it is for studio mixes?
Absolutely. Especially with larger spaces, stuff like that. That low end isn't being controlled by your headphones or by however your room is treated. You're hearing that in a space where sound's just bouncing around everywhere. And then you also start to encounter things like stuff getting phasing each other out, which is where low frequencies are particularly susceptible to this because the long wavelengths, they go bounce off another wall, and then when they're bouncing back towards you,
They interact with
exactly. If they
Okay.
cross each other
Yeah,
and cancel each other out, you hear nothing.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
So you start to hit these weird, like, either dead spots in the room or dead moments in the performance, right? Where things are...
Exactly.
Okay.
Crossing over
And then
each
there's
other.
also another factor with live music. A lot of times you can include more low end because you know what system it's being played through.
Okay.
In recorded music, you have to plan to not blow somebody's speakers and not put so much bass in a mix that somebody's speakers can't reproduce it anyways.
Gotcha.
Live, you can get away with a little bit more. Like festivals are just fucking thumping. You
Right.
know?
Okay. Because they're hearing right there in the space. The only way that sound's going to be transmitted is right in front of them.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this kind of reminds me of this other thing that we talk about sometimes, which is like the cut versus boost philosophy. I feel like that's related to this.
Very much so. Yeah. Exactly. Like, again, that mix that you just heard, and mix is in gigantic air quotes because it's really not a mix. It's just an example of using low cuts. But that's a really good example of starting a mix, not making bad decisions to boost things right away. Because you could do that. The first thing you could do is you could say, oh, these guitars don't sound too clear. Let's turn up some 4K and just make them bite or something. But as soon as you take away that low end, they're clear.
Right.
So yeah, this is definitely a great example of cut versus boost.
Okay. Well, louder is not always better, more is not always better, and this demonstration of a high pass filter is a really concise. I think even to the average listener, the differences between those audio samples should be really obvious.
Yeah.
The
That's really
obviousness of it should be apparent.
And the apparency of it should be very
really
clear.
obvious and clear.
Right.
Yeah.
Hopefully, it's as obvious in its obviousness as it is apparent in its apparentness.
Right. And then the guy went and,
Uh-oh. Are we creating a guy
and
song?
killed a guy, and then everybody did a dance and they were happy. I'm sorry.
Can we put a low cut filter on that?
You got
or
it.
a high pass
just
filter,
how about
whichever
an
one
all-cut
you decide
filter?
to call it. Yeah.
An all cut filter. That's fantastic.
Yeah,
man. I mean, if you guys you feel like you know everything
I
about
do.
it now,
I do.
we're all good.
I would really though appreciate it if you could, get our theme song back to normal. Can you just?
Yeah. Right, I'm gonna teach you guys about another kind of filter really quick here while I unfuck our theme song.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
From the intro. Ladies and gentlemen, the low pass filter.
Everybody did a dance and they were happy. I'm sorry.